Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Final Space, which we'll be getting into right now. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
April Collins.
Hi there.
And Alex Bonilla.
Hey.
Oh my god.
What was that?
That was the deep voice Mooncake.
Yeah,
oh, that's
me having a deeper voice than normal.
I didn't even recognize. Okay.
Wow.
You gotta watch the episode, Dylan.
I don't know if that was a problem, but no, okay.
Oh, burn.
Okay, take two. Hey.
I would have at least understood the voice box. Yeah, okay. I got that. Yeah, just through voice box. Okay. Anyway, we're talking the latest episode of Final Space, The Other Side, that aired tonight on Adult Swim. We're talking Final Space every week here at the Overly Animated Podcast. Find us at overlyanimated.com. Find our Final Space specific iTunes feed. Search for Final Space Overly Animated on iTunes. Our YouTube, youtube.com/overlyanimated, or search for Overly Animated on Spotify to subscribe to not miss our Final Space podcast. Big episode to talk about tonight. Make sure you've seen it. Spoilers for The Other Side and all previous episodes of Final Space, but I'm eager to get into this one and hear what you guys thought of The Other Side. Michelle, what did you think?
It wasn't what I thought. I assumed they were going to be funny hijinks, and that really was not the tone of this episode at all. Well, after the Footloose stuff, anyway, it gets a lot more serious. I honestly think I still prefer the last episode to this one, but that's like a personal preference. All those jokes really landed for me. I know they didn't for everyone else. I think this is a solid episode. I think it's an interesting idea, and the whole twist at the end did surprise me. I was like, oh, well, Kato, that's even worse. You're just there by yourself. But I thought it was a solid episode. But I don't know. It wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't bad. I think it was an intriguing idea, and I think the execution was pretty good. So considering that, like, solid B+, A- for me.
That's good. That's a good grade. Yeah. Okay. I think everyone else was on your side about the last week, by the way. It's just me. But
I was trying to be kinder.
Okay, that's good.
Some people,
yeah. It was me. Okay. So, Michelle, B+ for Michelle. April, what do you think of The Other Side?
Well, I didn't prepare a letter grade, but I think I agree. It was a solid episode, and it's interesting because I wasn't really sure, like, what we were going to do with this episode. And then, like, at the end, like, that twist, I was like, oh, like, this is even darker than before. Like, so, and I don't know, like, how I felt about that. But it was still, like, really interesting. Unhinged Kevin is scary.
You're the one to bring up Kevin? Michelle didn't even bring up Kevin.
I'm not going to talk about Kevin until it's time talking about Kevin.
And then the whole Clarence thing was, also intriguing. So I guess I would agree with, like, Michelle's B+, A- part of it, because it was a good episode. It's just that, like, I was not expecting it in any way, shape, or form. So, cause this season so far has been very, like, loose and,
Footloose?
Footloose, yes. Yeah. So, but also, like, has been very light as well. So this was very, like, not that.
Yes, definitely our heaviest episode so far. And, okay, Alex, what did you think of it?
I think I'm gonna mostly echo what Michelle and April have said, in that I appreciate how high concept this episode is trying to go. And I think that the twist at the end, the first time you're watching, hits you pretty hard, for sure. The experience of actually watching it feels a bit missing in terms of the usual humor you get out of the show. They're going for a different tone, more of a hopeless tone, and to lean into little Kato's mindset in this episode. So it's definitely I think I can say it's a well-executed episode, but because it's coming off of last week's episode, which was just like a lot of fun, a lot of jokes. So because it's right next to it, that's why I think it feels a little weird. Again, like the show is full of tone shifts, sometimes within the episode, sometimes from episode to episode, and so because this is such a big shift, we're going to like a very emotional ride here. So it's a pretty good episode. But for some reason, there's like some part of it that doesn't click for me to a point where I can say like this is the best episode of the season or something like that, because I feel like I had more fun with one or two other episodes already. Even though I recognize that this episode, when you break down like how it works pretty well.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I want to dig into that. I personally really loved this.
This seems like the kind of episode you'd like.
Oh yeah, it's very, very expected. I love time passing in different increments and different sides of things episode, which sounds specific, but there's a lot of these as examples.
Yeah, there's so many.
What an interesting kink.
That is my media kink. No, seriously, that's like my favorite episode archetype, and I think Final Space executed it so well. I'm so happy they did this. This is, I think I understand what Alex was saying just now about it feeling, so we'll talk about it. Maybe we'll see if there's something there or not in terms of something missing, but this is just such a well-crafted episode. I think it's easily the best of the season and one of the best of the series, if not the best. Like it's so I loved it so much. I'll say that. Like I think the beginning is really fun. I think this is, I understand it's not as like zany, I guess, and that could be preferable with this show. I would prefer more serious stuff, but I also think it's just one of the funniest episodes of the season, even with the serious tone. I think there's tons of great jokes in here with the older versions of everyone. So I think it like maintains the humor and has some of the most successful emotional things that the show's done, centered around a character who was like barely successful at all a season ago, and now is maybe the best character on the show after this episode. Like, holy crap, Little Kato has gotten such focus in 4 episodes, and this episode is the best one character showcase for a character in all of Final Space. Like, he's so fantastic here. The twist is incredible. It's so well executed. I want to talk about that. And the emotional beats we do with him, I think, are very successful. It might be more successful if it was a character we were already attached to more, but like this is the episode I feel like that gets you into Little Kato.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah,
because it feels like a big jump for me to care this much about Little Kato. Like, I recognize that the season has been trying to lay the groundwork for us to care more about Little Kato, but still, like, this feels like a thing that you would get like at the end of the season, to be like, once you've like gotten a full bond with Little Kato, and then you can like sympathize with him having to deal with years of loneliness. But doing it right now, I get that. I'm probably one of the colder ones, a Little Kato here, but like it feels like it could have been any character almost.
Yeah, I think the episode makes some attempts to make it specific to him at the end. And I think him talking to the hologram of his dad that he's typing to, right? Like, that's very good. And then he also has the flashback to his dad dying, and he's he's trying to get Gary back. Like, everything that we have for this character, I think, is here. I agree that this isn't someone who we're too attached to before. I think the emptiness, if you feel that from this episode, probably does come from the emotional attachment to Little Kato. But like, I was really feeling it the other episodes this season, and this episode really cements it firmly in like him just being one of the most empathetic for the audience characters. I mean, I'm thinking like, I don't think the show has had like superb characterization for any specific character, up to this point. So I honestly think Little Kato might be the best character, like, and that's like, I feel like the season's just done so much with him, but this episode specifically, I mean, it's like last episode, I was really unhappy with how fast things move. This episode is very deliberate, and it's really to the benefit of the emotional stakes that are being played out here, and also to the comedic beats. I think everything really comes together, although I do, my hang up, I think you guys are reflecting my hang up slightly, which was that, because, I'm ready to call this like one of the best animation episodes of the year. The only thing would be that, like, there is some sort of emotional detachment coming from the characters involved, because it's such like a character specific thing that it's driving the emotions from, and that maybe hasn't been the show's strength as much. So that would be the only thing, and we can discuss that. I think that's going to be something interesting to get into. Like, is that like a hindrance for what we're doing here? Can you still do like such character-driven storytelling without, cause like Alex brought up, maybe this is at the end of the season with Little Kato, but like this is like it's interesting to stick it here, and it's in the beginning of, with this arc we're doing with him. And it builds sympathy for him for the rest of the season, but like, does it also valid in this position? That's also really interesting. But yeah, I just think the storytelling is so good. And I really want to talk about the twist and how that's executed. But let's dive into Little Kato more, because, and I think Little Kato and the twist, these are like the highlights. I think like you get a character trapped, in the other side of things, you focus on him, and you think like they probably do it about Gary, but like we're continuing our kind of, divergence from Barry being such a heavy lead on this show. This is like another episode in a row where he's not a super big focus. This is the Little Kato episode after the Ash episode last week. And I think we were maybe praising that decision last week to a certain extent. So, Michelle, what do you think of like focusing so much on Little Kato here?
I think the idea of focusing on Little Kato was good. I hadn't considered if this had been given more time, but like I don't know, maybe I've also accepted that it's just not the kind of show that Final Space wants to be. So I think like having this being the 4th episode, I feel like it went about as well as it could have. I do think it was interesting to see Little Kato kind of, I mean, the twist kind of gives you an entirely different perspective, but watching this for the first time, you're like, okay, Little Kato's like kind of the leader, but kind of not, because nobody really listens to him and they won't vote for his plan, but then he does it anyway because Nightfall helps him. I mean, all that seemed pretty believable. If these were alternate reality versions of characters being 60 years older, I would buy that this is what would end up happening. Even having Mooncake have that ridiculous voice, I would kind of buy being a thing that could really happen. But the ending reveal, it just makes it so much sadder, because yeah, if you're alone for 60 years, how would you not go crazy and start imagining your friends around you, because like you're just in isolation for so long. And the fact that Gary he had that moment of being like, oh man, like I feel you, like that sucks. And Gary knows what that feels like. That was like a genuine moment between them that felt very earned and very real. And it helped me believe the whole Little Kato and Gary relationship being valid and deep and intense, a little bit more. So that was good. I mean, Little Kato, I think the thing that honestly hit me the most was when he, like, at the end goes back to his old room and he talks to his dad, even though it's like him talking to himself. He's like, well, yeah, maybe I should put this away for a while. He's like, yeah, I think it's about time. Like, that to me was the progression, like the culmination of everything the episode was building towards. Like, he's moving on from a place of holding his father so close now to letting him go. And I think like that's a huge statement, and I want to see where that leads him next. Maybe that's why it's the 4th episode. Maybe like that's the culmination of what they wanted to do with him up to this point. And if that's true, I'm genuinely curious what he's going to be like now. Having kind of not closed that chapter, but certainly like he's moving forward in a different way now without the same kind of relationship with his dead dad / himself. And like, that's really interesting. So if we get more into that, I think that could be a really good idea. Yeah, I feel a little weird about Little Kato too, but to me, actually, it's not Little Kato himself at this point. It's more of the believing that his closeness with Gary is real and authentic and earned, because that was exactly the same issue I had last season with Avocado when he died. Because, like, the episode he died, they really pushed into their friendship, but before then, I was not convinced that the show had given it enough time to feel earned. This time around, Little Kato spends all the time in this other universe missing Gary. It has a little memorial for him, and he keeps wishing Gary was there. And I guess because like Gary's the only one who's not in his half that we know of until the twist happens. But it also, like, it's really playing off of this idea that he and Gary had this really special bond. They were so close, and they were a tag team. And like, I feel like we kind of got that vibe from the first 3 episodes, but maybe not to the extent that I would wholeheartedly believe that. But moving forward, I think I'd believe it a little more. So that's like, I don't know, maybe those are my qualms, but I still like, yeah, this is the most interesting Little Kyle's ever been. So it was a great episode for him. Like, giving him the focus, I think, was a great decision. Again, like, somebody else who's not Gary gets to carry an episode, and I love that. I think that's a great balance. It makes us care more about everyone else if we actually give them focus for once.
Yeah. I think that was an interesting point about how this is the end for kind of what we've been doing with Little Kato up to this point. It's like a culmination of the season 1 arc or that continued into the beginning of the season. I agree with that. So I do think that's like really interesting. Like, how are we moving forward from here now that maybe he's moved on as much as he can from the death of his father, and like we still have his bond with Gary, and that'll anchor his character, but now we can do new things like
things.
We're also doing the Ash stuff. Like, how will that continue in this new context? So I think all that's really interesting. So yeah, maybe you place it here because you're concluding his arc and moving on to another arc with him. That's good. April, how do you feel about Little Kato now? How did you react to kind of this twist at the end that he's alone and everyone was imagined, and also like all the emotional beats with him and his dad at the end of the episode?
So it's interesting because Michelle was talking, and I mean, we all kind of talked about the placement of this episode, and I kind of wish that we had gotten this episode like second of the season, just because I think that would have been really good. Like, I don't know, like that, cause we, one of our things was like, oh, like we're doing this Gary, like Little Kato relationship. And so like now, like I totally feel for Little Kato, and, like that whole, like being lonely, like for that long, like of course you would go crazy. And and so like that's like one of my biggest fears is being alone. And so, or, having like that immense loneliness. And so like this like totally struck a chord for me. So I'm definitely like way more sympathetic for him now, than I've ever been. And I think the whole thing with, like his dad is interesting because they sort of use Gary as a placement for his father in this episode, because in a way he still like quote unquote has his dad because he's talking to the hologram, even though he's, both sides of the conversation. But like, I wonder too if like, would he have actually spent like 60 years never getting over the death of his father? Because like, does that also explain kind of like this like crazy behavior that he's had, which is another reason why like I've been very like, I don't know, like not fully on board like the Little Kato ship, because I was just like, you're just this crazy brat whose father died and like you're just being insane. But now I'm like, okay, like that's good that like you've accepted your grief and you're moving on from that now. And that takes a lot. Even if it did take him 60 years, like that's a lot. I mean, if it takes you 60 years to like get over it, at least now like we're starting fresh. And I agree that like this is going to be extremely interesting going forward with him. Like, is he going to be like the same? Is there going to be like a different air about him? Like who is Little Kato now? Because we only have like a vague sense and idea of who he is. But like, the idea that we have of him is also like him being like I say insane, that's not nice, but like him in a like severe like mental like traumatic state. So now are we going to watch him like sort of recover from that? Like, is he going to be like convinced that like no one is real anymore? Like, because that would be also very interesting to watch as well.
Yeah, he remembers everything at the end. Yeah, I think this episode reminiscent in a few ways of Star Wars: The Force of Evil's Running with Scissors. Keeping the character keeping it canon, the time spent away is actually somewhat rare for the. I mean, I think we're moving towards that to keep the stakes for this type of episode, but like it still feels big, like in that show, Marco. He remembers all that time, and he like did go through all that, and then this is that hits pretty hard, I think, that little Kato remembers everything. Another interesting thing he says, like, wouldn't he have gotten over it in 60 years, or like, that's surprising. What that made me think of is like, maybe it's a commentary about the episode, or maybe it's just something I thought of, is that like, maybe you need people around to get past that. Like maybe it's not really something you can get over on your own, so it's not really this time spent getting over it. It's like, with the help of other people, you can move past grief and maybe trauma. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing is like, it all comes together once like he does get these people back in his lives, and maybe that's something the episode's talking about.
Yeah.
We can get more into this type of thing. Alex, your thoughts on Little Kato now, and how you reacted to kind of the end of this episode, and your thoughts on that.
Well, Little Kato is, see, my thing is, I don't remember season 1 clearly enough to have because I vaguely remember that this whole thing of him feeling bad for his father was a part of his character. But in season 2 so far, we hadn't really talked about that at all. So that's why, again, like, I think in a vacuum, this episode is working towards something very emotional, but I don't think that the season had done enough in terms of building to make this feel as impactful as it should, because the Little Kato avocado relationship is not something I've been thinking about in the last 3 episodes. Now I'm interested to see what they do with Little Kato, but it definitely feels like a big artificial push of his character without when we could have been slowly building him over previous episodes, but instead we kind of shove it all into this one. So I'm fine with Little Kato. I think that this is a good episode for him. But it definitely feels like I think that that's also part of my emotional detachment to this episode, that I feel like this issue that we're dealing with in this episode kind of comes back out of nowhere after having been gone from the show for a while. And as for the twist, I think that the twist of it being all basically in his head, like that, it impacts you a lot when you're initially watching it. It's like, oh shit, like, yes, it's the years of loneliness, and it sets up the Gary line of like, I know how that is, and like that adds a bit extra to the relationship. But also, when you think about it, now that we know that everything is fake, that kind of like adds a little bit of weirdness to all the characters, that like in terms of seeing Kevin from the future and Mooncake from the future, Nightfall, and like how like Nightfall interacts with Little Kato. It feels a little weird now that you know that none of that was actually outside, but just like all himself talking to himself, and they're not representations of the characters we know as they are. So it's definitely a twist that has a lot of effect. But I do wonder what the effect would be if you watch the episode again, how much those conversations really mean in the end, if you know that Little Kato is just hallucinating all of this.
Yeah, it's a fair point that one of the consequences of pulling this type of move is it means that any character building you had up to that point is not real, at least from the lens of the other character. I think that my response would be it's valid for how Little Kato views these people, and it's about his side of the relationships with everyone, I guess. I did watch it back, and I think like it mostly just plays normally. It's like, okay, what these interactions end up not being real. They're still like part of the episode, so it's still just like it's still tangible to the audience. So I think it works in that regard. And nothing we're doing is particularly heavy character work with except for Little Kato in the 60 years later parts. So I don't think like we're not missing any Clarence thing that we're walking back here. I think it's fine. Excuse me, Clarence. And in response to other things, I think I prefer like single episode storytelling like this. Like I certainly think that it does affect the audience's emotional stakes to a character if you if you contain things to one episode, but like the weight of what we do in this episode spread out across the season, I think is less impactful than doing it all in one episode and just focusing on Little Kato. And I really like very focused storytelling, and I think the best way to accomplish that is within an episode if you're in the television medium. I think so. I really like doing all of this here. I found it is particularly notable that the season had not talked about avocado that much. I found that very restrained. I think the show easily can pull avocado out at any time. It did in the previously on, but that was basically it in the first episode. I found that restrained. I think it's more impactful when Little Kato pulls out the hologram thing that we hadn't seen him in a while. I think Little Kato's been holding on to this on his own for a while. And I think that's the intent is, this is something he's been dealing with on the inside. He's best buddies with Gary, but it's not like they're talking about this. He's not healthily dealing with this grief. And that's why he's held on to it. And that's probably why it takes him all this time, even when he's in this time distortion to, deal with it because, he needed to bring it to the forefront and confront it. And I think it at the very least is impactful bringing out avocado at this point, not having had him before that's how I felt, at least seeing that. And I want to talk about the mechanics of the twist, I guess. I think you guys hit on kind of the emotional beats really well. And I think that I was mostly in awe of how it was executed in mechanically, which another thing one of my favorite story elements is well executed twists, and we had the best one last year from Steven Universe, and this one is it's about how they use the characters, because there's this one gag about how Fox and Ash are poisoned by Hugh in the beginning, and Hugh's you can't prove that. And then you bring them out when we see Gary, in the middle of the episode, basically we see Gary and it's okay, here's Gary, time's moving faster, time's moving normally on Gary's side, it's moving faster with avocado, okay, we're primed as an audience to understand that at this point from all these shows doing this. Oh, here's Fox and Ash, and then where my mind goes is they were never here, right? It makes sense that they're there. This whole thing with they were there and then they died, that must have just not been true. They were downplaying it, they're saying that's not real. So okay, that was all just that was all for a gag, and Fox and Ash were with Gary on the other side. Okay. So that primes you to certain people are here, certain people are there. But then the end of the episode brings everyone else out at the same, right after it's revealed that Little Kato imagined all these people. And then it's all of them weren't there, So, just how it doles out the characters, I guess, on who's on what side and what their history was, I thought was really brilliantly executed. You totally believe that everyone is on Little Kato's side, and there's no reason to doubt that. And then at the end, when they're not there, it really makes sense, I think. So, I just think it was also just a very well executed twist storytelling wise.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It was.
It was, and I had those exact same reactions too, where I was just they died. It's also interesting too that Ash and Fox were the ones who died in Avocado's head, I guess, versus anyone else, because
right, isn't it interesting he doesn't keep Ash alive in his head?
Yeah, I thought that was really intriguing, because we've been sort of setting up this Ash and Little Kato relationship thing, which, I'm okay with now, but then I just thought it was interesting that, after the twist, I was just he killed off Ash, she didn't even stand a chance, she died in, such a, I say, mundane way, but, being poisoned to death is kind of, that whenever you're dealing with, space fights and titans and stuff like that, so...
My initial thought for that was maybe it was because he knew those two least of everyone, so if he was going to commit to conjuring up this backstory for 60 years, it would be harder to do it with them. But the thing that throws a wrench in that is he did keep Clarence.
Exactly.
Why would he keep Clarence over Ash? Yeah, it's a little odd, but maybe it's just part of the surprise of the reveal at the end. Because otherwise, you think, yeah, he wouldn't keep Clarence, because Why would you want to have him around?
Yeah. Well, the first answer is to like the mechanics of the episode, but what I'm thinking now that we're like analyzing the psychology of Little Kato with this is that he was incapable of kind of imagining too much with Ash or like dealing with any romance parts of himself until he got past the grief stuff, I think, with his dad. Like, I think that's what, like, maybe it's like, okay, now he'll actually like be interested in Ash in kind of a tangible way moving forward, but that's not something he could kind of deal with, because his mind was like dominated by Avocado. And so, yeah, he just, he kills Ash off. He doesn't want to deal with that, or he can't deal with it or something. I think that's kind of interesting if you think about it like that.
That is interesting. I didn't even think about like, in order for him to like move on and form another relation or that close of a relationship with another person, he would like that. Ooh,
why does he kill off Fox then? He just doesn't like Fox.
he's associated with.
They're packaged deal.
They're packaged deal.
They're packaged deal.
Okay.
But yeah, like emotionally, he can't really commit to forming that bond in his head until he gets past this other bond that was severed.
But that's interesting. Well, I guess then that like kind of sort of at least for me, that drives a little bit more of like he's using Gary in placement of his father kind of thing, because like they're so like committed, like they spend 60 years in his head to try and save Gary. Like, that's just kind of crazy if you think about it. Like, that's a long time to commit to saving one single person. Because they don't ever at any point mention like, we have to we spent 20 years and then we like flew the ship away because we just couldn't save Gary. Like, they don't even have that conversation. Or anything along those lines. Like, they never even discuss like leaving.
That's true, and it's unclear if, like, in Little Kato's head they're stuck or if they have the option of leaving. But at the very least, Little Kato never like lets go of Gary. Like, he's still mourning him always. He like leaves the death cookie there. Like, he's still always thinking of Gary, and that's a great point. We need to factor him and Gary into any kind of this like Little Kato psychology discussion, because that's like a primary thing that the episode is talking about with Little Kato wants to get Gary back. And yeah, maybe this is like the replacement relationship for him and his dad, and that's why something that stuck out to me is like he's so like earnestly friends with Gary in these past episodes, and I don't know, he's like a teenager. Like is he really that earnest about being friends with this little older guy? I feel like he'd be more moody about it sometimes, but he's just so like, maybe it is because he's staking everything on that, and getting, maybe it'll be healthier for them as well, like moving past this grief, him moving past the grief. Maybe he can develop a deeper bond with Gary in other aspects. Maybe they actually talk about things. Like, they should have talked about Avocado's death more. I think they did a little bit last season, but they should be talking about it more, I think. And maybe they'll have more of an emotional relationship beyond just like nicknames and stuff, because that's the big thing we saw from them up to this point.
Oh yeah, they even got he gave them like new nicknames this episode too. I always just kind of figured that like probably to Little Kato, Gary was the closest person to his dad. And so that's why he's like, at least up until this point, he's been so attached to Gary, is because like, this is the last person, like, this is the person that my dad was the closest to as far as he knows. And so, that would make sense for him to cling. So then my other worry too now is he going to like distance himself from Gary because he's no longer, I say like he's no longer that attached to his father, but in a sense he's sort of letting go of like that attachment to his father.
Yeah, I think he probably needs to reconfigure like his view of Gary. And that might take some time, I think. Yeah, I could see him like pulling away for a little because he maybe was placing too much on Gary relative to his relationship with his father, or Gary's relationship with his father. So yeah, maybe he might need some time. I could see them doing something like that moving forward.
Because that would also be that would be, I guess, like an interesting way to move forward as well, because again, we've all mentioned that, like, in the first 3 episodes, like, we're putting so much emphasis on this relationship between Gary and Little Kato. So maybe that's wise, because at this point it's now been severed, and this is where we go from here.
Yeah, I think probably we put a lot of emphasis on it in service of this episode because we knew we were doing it now, just mechanically this season. But now moving forward, I think there's ways to do it in a different way, in maybe less of an emphasis. Because we're probably going to focus on more things now. And I think next episode the story is going to start in earnest more for this season. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how we handle their relationship, also just this character. Because I think Little Kato's really shines definitely in this episode and also in the capacity they used him before, but they're not going to be able to use him to as significant of an extent, I think, in the rest of the season. So, like, how does he function going back to maybe more of a secondary character? That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. Also, back to the hologram. I just think just the concept of he's typing in to the hologram, feeding it speech that it talks back up. But also, I think that's brilliant. It feels like, why haven't I seen this before? But also just like the execution of focusing on the hologram, then like panning down to seeing he's typing at some point. Like, I just love that so much.
Well, and you can hear him clicking the entire time.
Yeah, and used hard to piece it together. Yeah.
I thought I was going crazy whenever I first was watching it. I was like, is someone typing on a keyboard? Like, who sounded this episode? They need to be fired.
So it's Game of Thrones coffee cup situation.
Yes.
No, yeah, I always think it's great when like you don't hide stuff from the audience, but you just like the audience isn't primed to hear the typing and associate with like, oh, he's typing in the dial. Like your brain doesn't go there immediately, but it's like it's all when you understand that that's what's happening. The fact that you had that happening before and now you like put it together, I feel like that's even stronger. So I love how that episode executed all that and the twist and everything. Like yeah, go ahead.
And that's just like a very great visual representation of inner voice, right? Like it's literally showing us that he talks to himself. He imagines what his dad would think about his actions, and like this is like physically representing that concept in like such a in your face way. So I love that part of it, like the fact that it's kind of like representing conscience in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And just this is like a sci-fi mechanic, the use of a hologram. Like it just feels so good. I think we maybe don't talk enough about how the show uses sci-fi devices, storytelling devices. This is probably my favorite one so far. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that more. But yeah, I thought that was so good. Let's dive into some of the I really love that high level discussion. We can get back there if it comes up, but let's talk about some of the specifics of the episode. I want to go into older versions of every character, but also the beginning of the episode, because we've had like this episode also is like a beginning segment. Like we had the game last week, and then the pissing contest before. Which Alex Olin said at like a con or something. Is that where he said this?
On Reddit.
It was just on Reddit. Okay, yeah. That the pissing contest was like vital to the studio executives' view of the season.
What?
Like,
apparently, yeah.
Did he extrapolate
was
on
important.
that point?
My reading of what he said was that the execs were looking for maybe more of a zany comedic show, and he wanted to delve into more deep storytelling, and so he had he needed the first two episodes to be more zany and to sell them more like on the zany. Like that was my reading of what he was talking about.
That explains a lot. Okay.
He said the first two episodes were like more of a concession to like getting where they wanted to go.
And I believe it too.
I believe it. That explains so much about the second episode. Oh man.
They still did a good job. I still defend the second episode. The beginning. Yeah. So I think this episode also had like a beginning segment. So I do think it's like just something they might do moving forward. I'm trying to remember last season if they did this as much. I know we said they had the Gary floating in space thing, so that's just kind of replacing. I feel like this episode's beginning segment is like definitely the best so far, and there's just like a ton of really funny stuff here. They start off with talking about the dimensional key that they got, which they said they got another one. Okay, because they already had one.
They're just recapping for us.
They already had one. Okay, I didn't put that together until just okay. So it's not like they found another one off screen. It's just that they had one in the beginning. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Still 3 more to go. Okay. The nickname stuff we talked about. Hugh's probably line of the episode. He says, "My first high five, and it was a threesome. No one's gonna believe me."
No one's gonna believe me. It's so good.
This episode was a lot more sexual than previous episodes, and that was just the first part of it. So
Alex, Hugh in particular has all of his lines are sexual. Like,
The thing happened. I cannot believe he hooked up with the other AI.
It was only in Little Cato's mind,
That
though.
was a weird joke.
is that Little Cato is shipping them. That's
Yeah,
all.
Little Cato's shipping them. I mean, if you're
It's
sitting
his
there.
fever dream doesn't mean he wants it. It's what his brain
happened,
decided. Yeah.
Yeah, he saw the chemistry and he decided to culminate it in his. Yeah. Alex, what do you think of this direction for Hugh's character, making him so sexual here?
I don't like it. I don't know. I mean, I guess, again, if we're continuing down the road of Hugh discovering that he has humanity after all, I guess sexuality is an important piece of the human experience, so he has to dive into that. And if innuendo is his way of entering in that sphere, then more power to him. But it's going to be a rough go.
For some people, an important part, but yeah.
Mooncake too, by the way.
Well, okay, so Mooncake.
Mooncake.
Yeah, I love all of the two Mooncake jokes. So Gary says he's so much bottled up energy getting dimensional key. Chokity. Gross. That's a different type of energy. We'll talk about that later.
He's gonna have coffee cake.
And then he says that the music you hear, you can't help but like explode. Chokity. Where is your mind right now? No, I mean dancing. Yeah.
Yeah, like it is Mooncake a sexual figure? Like, can he partake?
Yeah, can he partake?
Imagination like everyone else, I guess.
I guess.
It's like we talked about in the previous podcast. It's such like a basic gag of like Gary interpreting Mooncake when he's just saying it. But I feel like it's been good every time. Like I really liked it here.
Yeah. Not upset about it.
They could just do it the same joke every episode. It'd be good every time. I think also like this is Olin talking to himself like in these segments, and it's so good. Like this is some of his best work. I feel like.
Olin does great work when he's talking to himself.
Just have Olin talk
with Little Cato.
Or Tribor.
Get Tribor in there, yeah.
Get talking to himself.
That's good. Gary wants to play Loggins, and Ava says the Loggins, Kenneth, and so then we get this Footloose dancing sequence, and I really loved this. I think this is like one of the best kind of montage things. They do this a fair amount, but I think it was really fun. I guess the most notable part of it was he sees kind of like romance sparkles around nightfall at some point.
They dropped that real quick though, and I thank them for that.
It was quick.
It did not overstay its welcome, and that's a good thing.
Right, yeah. I think like he saw Nightfall as Quinn would be my interpretation.
Yeah, so he saw her as
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this reminds me of Quinn.
Yeah,
I forgot.
Right. I mean, I know we're very anti Gary Quinn, but I think that this is good to not completely forget about it. I think, like it makes sense for Gary's character that there would still be some moments like this at the very least. So I was fine with it here. But
for Gary's side, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was quick, so that's good. Then we get the space-time anomaly, shards of time, and Little Cato's like piloting through it, but then he hits it and he sees Gary disappear. Okay, so 60 years later, we got to talk about the older versions of everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Old Little Cato, and I wonder how much of this episode is started off with like, would old Little Cato still be called Little Cato?
I know! When they called him that, I was like, well, is he though?
They still call him Little Cato. I feel like it's better, but they could have called him Old Cato.
Adult Cato.
Well, look, if you're junior, but like the senior, even if they're dead, you're still junior.
You're still junior.
So.
That's true.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
You're just an 80-year-old Cato Jr. That's all.
Yeah. But he just looks older. I think that's good. He's the straight man, I guess, of all these zany future versions. We have Mooncake with the sexy voice box.
I felt felt very weird about that. I think it's just it's so much funnier to hear Gary interpret and not know what he's saying until Gary tells you than to just hear him straight talk himself.
I think it is funnier, but I also think this is funny for one episode. Like, I think it was...
I thought this more than one episode.
Yeah, but I believe voiced by John DiMaggio would be my reading of the credits. And he's, you got that filament? Oh, yeah, baby. Like, it's...
Why is he so sexual now? 60 years, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, considering how all sex-based his jokes are with Gary, right? Like, maybe this is his real inner voice.
But then later, a little Kato interprets Mooncake to be like, oh, you're talking to your dead dad all day long. And it's like, hey, were you always this mean? So why did little Kato look at Mooncake as mean? That's not nice.
Again,
what basis?
His brain is just firing on all cylinders because it's been 60 years in isolation. It's not like he wants that. It's just his brain thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I don't appreciate this interpretation.
I know Mooncake gave the cuddle to Ash last episode, but I don't think Mooncake can be blunt, from what we've heard sometimes. I don't know. I feel like I could see it. But yeah, also you could interpret any of this as just like, it's like when you're dreaming and your thoughts scramble and you just come up with whatever you saw the last day, right? Like this is like that magnified. So you know, you could just use that as an explanation for anything. We have old Tribor, who's, I think this checks out. Old Tribor.
He's crazy.
There's always a need for a crossbow. His best joke is later. We'll get there. I think there is. And he's this. We talked about the egg shrine to Gary, the little Kato. We have Kevin.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Who has
lost his hands and got like two forks or something.
You know, fork and a knife.
Yeah, fork and knife hands.
Which is very scary.
Practical for only being on a ship for 60 years, I guess.
Yeah, what do you think of his new limbs? You're
fine. I guess they check out. Yeah.
I guess they check out.
I don't know. I mean, like, I was more prepared for like to defend Kevin trying to kill Lil Kato, which I do have a defense for. Believe me.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. He says death cookies, yum, and then he gets another death cookie.
All the death cookies. I love it. Like he doesn't check out to him somehow that they're like for Gary and it's like an offering. He's like, oh no, a cookie. I love cookies. I'm gonna eat that.
I think it does check out to him because he calls them death cookies, but he doesn't care. He's still just
maybe he's just really
eating
the cookies dead. Maybe.
Also,
who knows what he thinks anymore?
Yeah,
it's surprising that they didn't have like Kevin just constantly like mourning at the wall,
right? Yeah,
because they're best friends. So.
Well, I'm gonna get into my theory for that.
Okay. We have Hugh and his famous plant cakes, and then Hugh and Ava married. Shut up, wife. Why did I marry you? Oh, you know why. Mooncake says, my man Hugh is nasty.
My God, Mooncake! All of that was just a lot to process.
I mean, Hugh having big dick energy is,
Also, she's a ship, though. How does that even work?
they connect to electrical wires.
Literally already.
I imagine it's like. I imagine it's like in Futurama, whenever Bender's dating the ship or whatever, that episode. That's what I imagine it's like. They merge CPUs.
They're
Hugh
opens
up his butt panel and like...
No!
Okay. We have Nightfall, who is blind, which the episode doesn't comment on her being blind until 10 minutes later, but then it just throws out a bunch of blind jokes all in a row. I felt like it was very reminiscent of Toph from Avatar type of jokes.
So similar.
Yeah. Which in retrospect isn't the greatest thing, but this episode is, I don't think anything was super disrespectful, but it was, I don't know, I guess like this is like she's like the sage old woman in his mind, and her being blind augments that. I don't know. I could see it.
I can see that. That's kind of what I got, because she was already the oldest one of the group, I'm assuming. Yeah. We don't know how old Clarence is.
At least she went through all the stuff.
Yeah.
But, all the timelines.
All the stuff.
The stuff.
It makes sense if she like held up the best 60, because she's already probably spent 60 years in all these other dimensions.
Yeah. Which is also the other thing that I was like, oh, because immediately whenever they were like, oh, it's 60 years in the future, and I was like, well, Nightfall's dead. Like, but now she was alive.
Kidding.
Yeah, I guess maybe we're going by this isn't biological aging for Little Kato because he's back to being like in the Star episode. Adult Marco goes back to normal Marco. Yeah. So that's he's just he's still kind of the same age even though he went through 60 years mentally. Yeah, which doesn't like make complete sense because I think large, if not most of who we are is like in term age wise is mentally, but you know, I'm fine with TV rules for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is isn't this the stuff that killed Fox and Ash? You can't prove that, says Hugh. And I think he says that again later. That's a very Hugh line, I feel like.
Yeah.
We talk, Little Kato talks to the hologram. Mooncake, hey, little avocado, you gonna be talking to your dad all day long? Were you always this mean? Yeah. I like little avocado. I like that from Mooncake. And then we get to see Clarence, wearing Gary.
He decides to do a suit. He doesn't even like Gary that much. Like Kevin should have had a Gary suit. Why'd Clarence have it?
You're right. Wouldn't Kevin?
That would have made so much more sense. Or even if Kevin was, like, dressing up as Gary, but as a ghost.
Oh my god, yeah. Look, I'm not dead! Surprise!
Honestly, though, this is Clarence's best episode.
It is.
True,
I think it's what Clarence is a classic bit. People love it when I slip this little sucker on.
Right.
I think that's really funny. Yeah. And then he talks about his, we'll get it later. But yeah, I think this and the Money Compass are, his best gags so far. So I thought this was successful, Clarence. I still am not sold why he's there, but,
it's over Fox and Ash. Yeah.
He gets the jokes that don't fit with any of the other characters.
Oh my god. What is
I think he's there in general.
With the other characters.
Yeah, I guess that is his role. I mean, his like role in the show, like in every episode. Like, but yeah, this is fine. His use here was good. Little Kato's the distress beacon. They're gonna vote on it, whether to use it. Tribor, I like Tribor's Alexan sash gag.
It looks like he literally put it together like as soon as they said they were gonna have an election.
Oh, you don't believe that he had it stored?
No, I think he just put it together.
So distrusting of Tribor. I mean, you're probably right, but you have reason to distrust Tribor, but he's so sweet though. He's
so sweet, just pouncing with that crossbow.
Yeah, he's with the crossbow. That's true. So then Locato goes to rally votes, and we get more gags from everyone. Tribor has the drinking bird. That's his big project he's been working on.
The zoom in on the bird was very upsetting for some reason.
Why was that upsetting?
I think it's just the anxiety of like seeing the bird go back and forth. Like they keep zooming in, so like the eye is bigger every time, and even like little Kato's kind of disturbed too. He's like, okay, it's like creeped out by it. So there's just something about the construction of that scene that like somehow they got me to feel weird about a drinking bird.
I think you're always supposed to feel weird when Tribor is involved. So I think
maybe it's just him.
True, yeah, just be Tribor.
Has any detail been worked out? Not at this time, no. Like that's classic Tribor. We have unhinged Kevin. He's burning you alive tonight. He's singing about that, Michelle.
He
says, I'm not really gonna do it tonight. Yeah.
Just leave that hanging in the air.
What do you think of this as the future Kevin, Michelle? Are you buying it?
I mean, I'm buying it for the simple fact that, like, it hurts me to see Kevin this unhinged. Him killing random people who are in line to commit suicide is one thing, but him trying to murder Locato in his sleep is another thing. I think the issue is Kevin was built to be a, like, insanity prevention guide, but I think... in a way, without Gary, he becomes insane himself. Like, they need each other to really survive and function wholly. And so Kevin literally just went bonkers because he needed Gary in his life. He didn't have him around for 60 years. And that absence of Gary was enough to just let all his screws go loose slowly over time. And I totally buy that, because their bond is, like... super special. So of course he needs him to remain sane. Yeah, to Kevin.
Right, yeah, but yeah, without Gary there, Kevin, yeah, this makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Toxic codependence.
It really is. Kevin needs
absolutely.
therapy, along with everyone, but Kevin in therapy would be a fun
Kevin
episode.
needs couples therapy with Gary, though. That's like the Gary would want to go.
Gary would be reluctant the entire time to be there, but
Gary would not show up.
and then Kevin would like leave and drag him in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he would be the therapist probably.
I can see that.
Okay, that could be a
He was trying
B
to find
plot.
his purpose, so
Yeah,
I can see that.
okay. Clarence, he is the martini that's his own piss.
Yes.
Also, where did he get the olive?
That's a good point.
Oh my God. He's been
I was
saving that
really
sucker.
Right? I was like, wait, did you just have like a jar of olives that you've been keeping around for 60 years? Because I would have eaten those already.
Maybe he reuses the same olive every time he drinks his piss.
So it's like not even real anymore. It's like a husk of an olive.
You could just reuse that, yeah. I thought this was another good Clarence gag. So, this is that plus the it's a classic Clarence bit. It's a classic bit. I think those are two of the three best things we've done with Clarence, along with the Money Compass. So, I think best episode for Clarence, but not necessarily saying that much. But we'll see what we do with them later. This also checks out. I feel like for it. I think it's successful when you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense for like what they'd be doing later. Like I think that adds to the comedic value of like, this is like the natural extreme for this character, not even that much of an extreme for a lot of these cases. And Nightfall though, not too many comedic beats until later, and she says she'll help because it's what Gary would have wanted, and your father wouldn't have said any of those things to you, she says to little Kato. So I guess Nightfall views her favorably in his delusions. At least he's like one positive figure this whole time. I
don't know if there's something I want to bring up about this thing with Nightfall or not, because I know it wasn't real technically. But this is the episode that made me a little concerned about Nightfall. And not because she wasn't a character before. I think she's really been playing this super supportive role with everyone. And by everyone, I mean Gary, Ash, and now little Kato.
Mm-hmm.
But being a supportive role is... I feel like that means, like, I guess, like, if she has her own episode, that would be cool, and I'd like that, because right now all she's doing is just saying nice things to other people and pumping them up to go do their own thing. But, like, what about her, you know? That's kind of how I felt at the end of the episode. As much as everyone else's backstory for this crazy timeline checks out, like, I felt kind of sad being like, yeah, she's really encouraging and great, and, like, those are all great positive things for a person to be, but that's kind of all there is to her right now. And that seems like kind of a shame. So
we're due for a Nightfall episode.
Yeah, we're due for a Nightfall episode.
2 episodes in a row where she's basically mom.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like she's got.
Don't play into from last episode.
She's gotta have her own stuff going on, and I hope we see it, because just being supportive is like a little sad to me.
Yeah, well, she's been through more than any of these people,
exactly.
Right? And
she's got crazy stories. Why can't we hear any of them right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that feels like something that's going to be addressed.
Okay, that'd be good. I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, like this character with this huge past, and she's just been on the sidelines. Like it'll culminate somehow. I think that'll be really interesting when we do address this. Yeah, and then we do the distress beacon, and the Triboard tears off the sash, and the Titan is coming. Hear that, my man beast? She's as thoughtful as she is insatiable, says Hugh.
Oh boy.
Oh man.
Alex, thoughts?
No.
It didn't make sense. Because they see the Titan, and then Q comments on Ava's sexiness, so like it doesn't fit.
There's a little shoehorn in, that's fine.
Yeah.
She was helping them, and she was making sure Q heard. I guess. I don't know.
Sure. Maybe the noise of the Titan reminds them of their sexual encounters. Is that what's going on?
I think that's what's going on. I think you cracked it. Yeah. There's
like they purr and growl at each other throughout this
Ava
episode.
is literally the ship. If they have sex, everyone has to hear it on the ship. Have you thought about that? That just seems crazy to me.
She could go into one room.
They
for
all
audio.
already need therapy.
She's every room.
She's every room.
In these stories, the AI can usually talk in one room or all the rooms. I feel like that's usually a thing.
Although, in the beginning of the episode, she plays logins throughout everywhere, including where Clarence and Clarence is like, no.
Yeah, she clearly.
Why does Clarence hate logins? What's the reasoning there?
I think that it's that Gary had been playing it a lot. I guess was the implication, or that I don't feel like they'd experience with it through Gary.
I feel like he hadn't been playing it a lot, though, because, Gary was very surprised to know that there was the whole catalog of Kenny logins was available.
And for the other people, it might be like Gary played it on the other ship, but Clarence wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's, unclear. Clarence was there for an episode. Maybe it was that episode.
But that was the very beginning. They weren't even on the ship together.
Yeah, I don't think they were on the ship. I don't know. We'll get back to that. There's probably a reason. Gary, we did this. Yeah, we talked about the scene of them on the other side, Gary, Fox, and Ash, and then we get all the dramatic stuff of Nightfall that confuses Little Kato and Tribor. Then Little Kato goes to kill the Titan, and Kevin says, "Whoa, did anyone else get goosebumps all over their forks?"
I did enjoy that. I thought that was funny.
Michelle, does Kevin think everyone has forks?
I mean, maybe. Yeah, he probably assumes everyone has cookies. Also, if he thinks everyone has forks.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Their whole plan to kill the Titan, and we get the flashback to Avocado dying, and Little Kato says, "What does he have to prove? Everything." He dies from Little Kato dies from the Titan, and Tribor tries to band-aid him with the little band-aid.
It doesn't stick.
Oh god, yeah, that was a doomed plan.
He knows it's just for symbolic. That's what he says. Yeah. And then the reveal that no one's there. Then we get to see everyone on the other side, and Ash is going to break through, and Tribor wants to run this plan past Richard. Which nobody cares about your dumb friend Richard. All right, this is a weird gag to go back to in this moment.
We're all building up to the finale when Richard saves the day.
Oh my god, that could totally happen.
We're gonna meet Richard, and I'm so excited.
It was just last episode. This is only the second time, and then this climax of this very dramatic episode, we bring out the Richard guy. It feels right for this show, but it's I can't believe it. I think this was funnier than the first Richard moment for me, at least. But yeah, we'll see what they do with Richard. This is probably Tribor's new trying on Quinn's clothes. I guess they need to have him have a recurring gag every season.
Maybe.
And, maybe. In the future, he was probably wearing his own clothes. Was he wearing his own clothes? That could have been a thing too. Could have been, but no. And then the ending of the episode, Little Kato's, he remembers everything, and the avocado holograms. There you go. Yeah, I think we had good discussion towards the beginning about all the psychology stuff, and about and I think we hit on all the comedic stuff with the future versions of everything. I think that was good. So any culminating thoughts about going back to our earlier discussion, or just final thoughts on the episode, Michelle?
After a discussion, I feel a little higher on the episode and a little higher on Little Kato. I think this idea, if we're tackling this in terms of I don't want to say daddy issues, because he's justified in his grief over his father, but culminating dad thoughts, I guess, and especially April's point about Gary being kind of a father figure. And that's tied into his whole desire to reach Gary and to talk to his father in the meantime. That makes the ending really impactful, because him putting the thing away, as we said before, it shows that he's moving on from that. He's ready to put that on a back burner and to embrace other parts of his life that he potentially has been neglecting up to this point. And that actually is really powerful and a great character thing to focus on. So, looking at it that way, I think it actually is at least an A-, if not a solid A of an episode, all things considered from a character standpoint. So I'm glad we talked about it. Now I feel a little more high.
Yay, nudged up the grade a little. That's good. That was me last week. Nudged up a little bit. Yeah, that's usually we're not lower on episodes after discussing them. That's good. April, closing thoughts.
No, I'm definitely like higher on this episode. The more that I got to think about it and like talking about it with you guys. So I'm just really excited to see where we go from here. Like, are we going to continue in like this heavy tone that we have now set up, or I just want to know where we go. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, pretty open-ended 4 episodes into a season.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't started too much plot yet, so going to be very interesting to see what we get from episode 5 and beyond. We could maybe, you all got mad at me last time for even hinting at a future plot thing.
Yeah, please don't tell us.
Okay. I'm just saying that the name and the name says what the name of the episode says what I said.
Then don't tell us the name yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you already know, but okay. Alex, final thoughts.
Well, I continue to expect the show to bounce around in tone and to continue to attempt ambitious things, because that's what the show has done so far, and it'll keep doing it. And I think that's what keeps it special, that it's trying for a wide variety of things, where it can do something as high concept as this, and it shoots its shots in a lot of different ways. And so because of that, the way it lands will be very varied, but I prefer that because you obviously get some interesting home runs out of it when it lands perfectly. So I'm excited for that. I will just end this with a ranking of my top 5 Kenny Loggins songs. First is Danger Zone.
I didn't know you were so familiar.
Soundtrack. Look, the 80s radio was very high in my parents' listening as a kid, so I actually have listened to a lot of this.
You've not seen Archer, though, have you?
No.
So that's Danger Zone is very prominent.
Okay,
there.
well, it's good. They picked the best Kenny Loggins song because that's the one that pumps you up for stuff, and that's why I kind of disagree with the preferred one here. But anyway, 1 is Danger Zone, 2 is I'm All Right. I believe that's from Caddyshack. I'm all right, don't worry about.
Don't get us taken down from
YouTube.
Yeah,
3, This Is It. 4, Danny's song from when he was with the duo Loggins and Messina, so that's from like the early 70s, and 5, Footloose. So Footloose is barely in the top 5 of Kenny Loggins songs. It's not that special, and he's got a lot of better songs in his catalog. So all I'm saying is,
afford.
Yeah, I know Gary probably likes it for the dance sequence, which admittedly is iconic, but I'm just saying musically there are better songs.
Well, okay. Yeah, okay, that's good. I like this ranking. I'm glad you have the Kenny Loggins knowledge, breadth of knowledge that I do not have. But I think it's because they wanted the dance. Like, the dancing makes sense with Footloose, right? It's not because it's like a better song. It's just because they wanted the dancing stuff here.
Yeah, and like Gary likes to dance, and it's a good callback from that time he did the Footloose dance last season. So it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. I'm impressed you were restrained with your Kenny Loggins ranking until the end of the podcast. Thought you would have brought that out earlier. That's good though. This is like prime position for it. I agree with your first point though on the, what I really want from this show is complex, narratives and storytelling. I think this is what I said at the end of last season. I really want more complex narratives from the show. This is exactly what I wanted. And I also think episode 3, even though it didn't really work for me, I think like they went for it. Mm-hmm. And, like Alex said, sometimes it won't work for some person. For me, this episode was the home run. Like, this is like exactly what they're capable of. So I just want like high concept stuff every single week. Like that, like this show is capable of it in a way which a lot of shows on TV aren't able to, for whatever reason, approach. Like, Owen seems good at like managing certain expectations and getting to a point where he can do some pretty great stuff. So I think that, and also like it's just like the fact that they have such great animation. I think that also makes you really capable of doing this. Like, they can execute on these concepts in a great way visually and storytelling wise. So, I just want more of this from the show. Like, this was great for me. And yeah, I mean, I assume we won't get kind of one-offs like this every week moving forward, but we will C, I won't read the title or the description.
Thank you.
But it's exciting, so we'll see next week's episode, and we'll be there to talk about it. Let us know what you thought of The Other Side on the YouTube comments or overlyanimated.com or our Discord at overlyanimated.com/Discord. And consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Caroline, aka Princess, and thanks as always to our patron executive producers Ryan, Alex, Steve, Beatrice, Hugh, and Michael. Check out our other stuff at overlyanimated.com. Including stuff that's up there. We're recording this a little bit in advance, so I don't really know what's up there right now. But yeah, we'll have stuff there. And more Final Space coverage. OKKO, Young Justice, etc. Fruits Basket, yeah, all the favorites. They'll be there. But Final Space, the most favorite of them all, right? And
Yeah.
To some, yes.
To some, yeah,
Sure.
we're some pretty big fans on our community. Yeah. Okay, so we'll be back to me because I love this episode. So now I'm in. So it's good. Okay. Well, we'll be back to talk Final Space next week. Thanks guys for listening. We will see you next time. Bye.
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 Bye.